Okay, so last week we introduced the concept of scriptable objects, which are a deviation from our normal pattern of using monobehaviors for everything. So instead of inheriting from monobehavior, as we do for most of our C# classes in Unity, we're inheriting from scriptable object, which has some different properties. One of the things that's neat about them is that they can hold lots of functional information in the object itself, and so you can define multiple kinds of an object and then just drag them and drop them however you need them, which is what we're going to do for our player. So for our simple player right now, he's got the pistol, a shotgun, a submachine gun, an assault rifle, but basically all they do now is demonstrate what their damage range is. If I open up the game and hit play, if I can switch between weapons and see that my damage range changes. Which is neat, but we want to add in a lot more properties for the weapon definition. So we're going to be typing for a little bit here, and every time I start to come up with how to present this, I'm struck because I want to do the whole thing at once. I want to do all the weapons at once, and I want to take care of all the things at once. But for today, let's just get the weapon definition filled out, and then we'll work on the pistol. And then we'll come back to adding the other weapons in next week or this week, depending on how far we get. So, what I want to do first is open up weapon definition. This is a C# script. And right now, this is all it has. We've got the create asset menu, which allows us to create the new weapon definition in the...
You aren't streaming.
Oh, right. Sorry.
No worries.
I was about to say,
Yeah, sorry. Share my screen. Yep. Screens. Do you see Visual Studio?
It still isn't up for me. There we go.
Okay. This is a well-oiled machine. This is. Okay, so we opened up. So let me go back to what I did here. Was I went to Unity and I went into my scriptable objects that we created last week and opened up the weapon definition, and it opened up in Visual Studio. Because it's still a C# script. It's just a different inheritance, and so it's got different functions available to it. So the first thing we do here is have a create asset menu bit that's going to allow us to actually create weapons in the editor, which is kind of neat. And then we've got a few pieces of information. So we want to break these up into functional units and have tooltips in the editor that tell us what these things are. So here we go. Above, inside the curly braces, but above my weapon name, let's type header and then parentheses, double quotes, weapon identification. And then after weapon key, I'm going to press enter a couple of times just to give myself some space and do header weapon damage. I misclicked on something. Okay. I'm not going to put tooltips on these because my weapon name, my weapon key, my minimum damage, my maximum damage are fairly straightforward. But I do want to put some tooltips on the next bit, the shot details, because we're going to want to remember what each of these labels means. So let's do another header here. Header. I'm going to keep doing that on this keyboard. Shot details. And we're going to create our first tooltip. And we're going to say the minimum time between shots. And that minimum time is going to be called public float my min shot interval. Okay, so let's save this. And I want to go back to Unity and look at a couple of things. So let's go back to Unity. And our script is updated and it's compiling. Now, if we go into my weapons, my scriptable objects, the actual weapons that we've created before, you'll see if we go to pistol that it now has our headers, which is great, and it's got our new variable, my shot interval. And if we mouse over the word my shot interval, it'll tell you what that is. Also notice that in the descriptions on the left-hand side, my weapon name is not concatenated without spaces and the lowercase m in the way that it is in the script. The reason is because Unity knows what the convention is for naming scriptable object variables, and it's parsing it out for you and printing it out in a human-readable way, which is pretty neat. So we're going to add a bunch more details. So the minimum shot interval is, right now, the gun goes off as fast as the player can click. And for the pistol, we'll probably leave it that way. We may make a more powerful pistol that has a longer lag between shots. And certainly for things like shotguns, we want there to be a little bit of a gap in between shots. And for automatic weapons, this is how long in between each shot while you're holding the pistol down, or while you're holding the trigger down. So we're gonna deal with that in a minute. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. We're gonna do tooltip. If the weapon is automatic, holding the trigger down will continuously shoot. And yours don't have to be this verbose if you don't want them to be. They're just notes so that you can remember what the things do. And the more we can do with scriptable objects in the editor, instead of having to code stuff. I mean, one of the goals here is to not avoid having to hand code everything. So we want to be able to not have to pop back over here to look at stuff. Anyway, so we're going to have a public bool is automatic. All right, then we're going to have another tooltip. It says, if the weapon is a blast weapon, it shoots multiple shots at once in an arc. And so this is basically going to be our indicator of whether or not something is a shotgun, if it has a blast radius. And this is called isBlast. Tooltip. This is the number of blast shots fired each time the trigger is pulled. And for that, we're going to create a integer, public int, my blast count. So we may make some of our shotguns stronger or more effective by having them have a tighter arc, or we also make them have just a lot more shots that go out each time. And we may also later decide that we want it to be a random number of blasts that go out. We'll see how they work out in actual gameplay testing. My blasting. This is the angle of the arc of the blast weapon. When we get around to programming the arcs, you'll see why we want to capture this. And we want this to be a public float because we want it to have fractional degrees, my blast angle. Okay. Tooltip. We're almost done with this section. If the weapon is a burst weapon, it will fire sequentially a number of shots each time the trigger is pulled. So this is public bool is burst. And the last tooltip for this section is going to be the number of shots a burst weapon fires when the trigger is pulled. And public int my burst count. Okay, so I've described what each of these is going to be doing in the tooltip, so I don't think I need to go over them again, but the burst one is one that we're going to use later on from our machine gun, or for maybe a specific kind of machine gun, with the idea that if the player selects the burst option, we would set this flag to burst, and the number of bullets that we fired would be sufficient to kill a zombie, or maybe 2 or something. And we're going to play around with this, with the idea that we need to give it some advantage over a fully automatic weapon, and it may be that burst weapons are just more common, or that the minimum shot interval for a burst mode of an automatic rifle is faster than the shot mode of the automatic mode. Anyway, we'll play with it. Okay, so that's all of our shot details. Then we want to work on bullet details, and this is going to be, we're actually going to keep track of the inventory of the bullets on the actual weapon, on the scriptable object itself. The reason for doing this rather than creating it in a C# list is that anything that has access to the weapon's weapon key also has access to everything else on that weapon. So if we just keep it here, it'll make our code a lot neater. There is one caveat to that, though, which is when we make changes in the game, it will make changes permanently to our object. So if we use a bullet, that bullet will be gone the next time we restart it. So if we only have 4 bullets in our gun and we shoot twice, the next time we start, we'll only start with 2 bullets in our gun. And we're not going to want to do that. We're going to want to start with the same initial conditions over and over. And to that end, we're going to create our first game manager that's going to keep going to initialize the game for us and set some things up. But right now, let's keep working on that's not where I want to be. Let's keep working on our weapon definition. So we're going to create a header here for a new section. This is going to be called bullet details. Boom, 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 boom. And we're going to write tooltip. And this is the maximum number of bullets that can be carried for this weapon. This value won't change once we set it. This will just be a reference value. So we're going to make it public int my bullet max total. Okay, then we have another one here that is going to have a tooltip. This is the number of bullets currently loaded into this weapon. This one will change dynamically as we're playing, and this is why we're going to introduce the game manager to set it up for us. And we're going to say my public int my current loaded bullets. And also, because we're storing it on the weapon, we don't have to keep track of which weapon has which bullets or whatever, because whenever we switch weapons, it actually changes which scriptable object we're looking at, and so it will automatically change the number of loaded bullets. So if we use 4 bullets out of one gun and then switch to a shotgun and then switch back, those 4 bullets will still be missing, which is what we want. There is an argument to be made that there are multiple ways to handle bullet counting. One way you can do it is to specify how many magazines you have, and that was the original intent. But after noodling through some of the scenarios, if you keep track of only the number of magazines a player has and automatically load that number of bullets into the gun each time, then the player loses bullets by reloading early. And we may want to implement that later, but most games have a basic mode, where you, if you reload, it just tops you off, and you don't lose the bullets that you already have loaded into your gun. So this setup will allow us to have that functionality. Okay, so this is the maximum number of bullets that can be loaded into this weapon at once, and we're going to set that to be a public int my bullets per magazine. And finally, we're going to do one more tooltip. This is the number of bullets for this weapon that the player is currently carrying. And that is going to be, an integer called my current bullet total. This is going to help us keep track of how many bullets the player has in the gun right now, how many bullets for this type of gun the player has total, how many bullets will be loaded once the player initiates a reload action, and how many bullets the player can carry total for this particular weapon. Okay, so let's stop there, save that. And we're going to go back to Unity. And after everything compiles, we'll see that our pistol has a whole lot more fields to it. So, we're going to do something special with the... Like I said, I want to get the pistol working today, and then we'll work on the other weapons as we move along. If we can get far enough through the pistol, and we get it fully functional, then we'll move on to the next thing, which will be the shotgun. Ooh, excuse me. All right, so... Sorry about that, I had a coughing fit. Okay, so the maximum damage is fine for right now. We're going to leave the minimum shot interval for the pistol at 0 because we want it to fire every time the player pulls the trigger. Is automatic, we'll leave that unchecked because it's just a regular pistol right now. Is a blast weapon? No. Because it's not a blast weapon, my blast count and my blast angle don't matter. It's not a burst weapon, so my burst count doesn't matter. So we don't need to change any of the shot details for the pistol to start off with. Bullet details we do need to change. And we're going to do something special with the pistol. We're going to set the maximum bullet total to -1, which is not a lot of bullets. So we want to avoid the condition where the player has used up all of their bullets. And because we don't have a melee attack in place in this game yet, so if they use up all their bullets, all they can do is get eaten by zombies. So what we're going to have it do is once you use up all of your other weapons, it will default back and keep going back to the previous weapon in the list until it gets back down to the pistol, which has an infinite number of bullets. So we're going to write in our code a check to see if the bullet max total is -1. Then we're going to assume that the weapon has infinite ammunition. My current loaded bullets, we're going to say is 15. We're going to give the player 15 bullets per magazine, and my current bullet total, we're going to start the player off with, it doesn't matter because he has infinite bullets. So we're going to leave that at -1 as well. Okay. And the reason I'm using -1 and not 0 is because the other weapons, as bullets are used up, can get to 0, and we're going to have checks in the logic that will check for 0. So -1 is our indicator that we're in a weird condition, and that condition is I am an infinite weapon. And what that also means is if I want to make the assault rifle infinite for testing, I can just change this bullet max total to -1. But, okay, so let's go into the shot handler, because what we need to do is we need to start dealing with unloading bullets. Before we had a thing in the game, in the game user interface, that was a question text, and the question was asking, what is my damage range? We're going to change that to how many bullets are currently loaded in my pistol. How many bullets are currently loaded probably is fine. And the answer text is going to be some bullet count. And we're going, just as before, we're going to update this as the player shoots. And then we're going to get into how to dynamically draw out the bullets underneath the icon. We actually don't have the icons yet either, but right now we're just going to make sure that the bullets are deprecating correctly, and then we're going to create the reload function. You'll see. Here we go. Okay, so let's go into the shot handler because we need to fix something, or change something rather. I can go to simple player and I can go to shot handler, or I can go to my scripts folder and open up shot handler and double click it to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so right now this is what we want to change. We right now will fire the weapon every time the player presses the fire button. And we don't want to do that. What we want to do is fire it as if the player presses the shoot button and enough time has elapsed since the last time the player shot. So we need to create a float in here to handle this called my last shot time. And then in our if statement, we're going to add to it. So we're going to have a logical and. And logical and says that in order for this if to be true, all the things in this statement have to be true. Both the first one and the second one. And you do that with a double ampersand. I've used it a couple of times, but I haven't really talked about what the logic is. Just for clarity, I'm going to actually press enter here and actually tab this over by pressing tab. Just so that you can see what the whole if block written out, rather than in one line where it can be a little confusing, written out in a block. So if time.time, which is a built-in Unity function that we're getting from mono behavior, because remember this is a mono behavior. If time.time is greater than my last shot time plus my weapon handler dot my current weapon definition dot my current weapon definition dot my minimum shot interval. Okay, so what this says is if the last time I shot is sooner than my last if I press shoot before I've reached the end of my minimum shot interval, then nothing will happen. It would just skip over this step. Okay? So I'm going to actually let me clarify this by doing this and moving that back. Get rid of that. Okay, so let's play with this for a second to make sure that it's working the way we intended. So this if doesn't have an else associated with it. So if this happens and the time is not since the last time it shot, then nothing should happen. So let's save this and go back to Unity. And let's go back to our scriptable objects. You can do it in the folder. You can also do it on the player, because remember, they're the same object, right? So if we go to simple player, this is not an instance of it. This is this object. Let's take the minimum shot interval and set it up to, well, let's leave it at 0 first. So I'm going to press play. And, whoop, I need to update the bullets. But hooray. And that works just fine. That seemed a little loud in my ears. So let me turn my player's volume down more. Actually, it's the camera's volume. No, is it the player? Let me try this again real quick. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I'm going to turn this down to 0.0, just so it's not quite so loud in the video. I know you guys can't hear it, but okay. So the bullets are firing as fast as I can pull the trigger, which is the original design. And that's fine. So now let's go to our pistol and let's up our minimum shot interval to 2 seconds, which is really long. press play, and I'm going to press shoot. Oh, it's not it's not letting me fire for 2 seconds, but then it's letting me fire as much as I want. And the reason is because I forgot to do something, which is we need to actually set last shot fire time when you fire. So if you get through this check, then my last shot time is equal to time.time. Save that. Come back to Unity. Press play. Okay. Ah! He's gonna eat me! Doesn't do a lot of damage. Okay, so clearly that's working. I'm going to set it back down to 0 because we want the pistol to have no shot interval right now. We may want to come back and eventually give the pistol some kind of a shot lag. But since it's the player's like emergency weapon and most zombies are going to take a lot of hits, we want to. I want to right now default it to having 0. Okay, so let's go back to our shot handler and move on with our next little enhancement, which is that when a shot is fired, we want to remove the bullets from the gun, right? So we want to say if the player hits fire and the time has passed, then we also want to remove the bullets. Now, the bullets being removed has nothing to do with whether or not you hit something. So we can go ahead and do it here up front. If they pull the trigger, the bullet goes out regardless of whether or not they're successful in shooting. So it's going to be outside of this if, which handles our, this whole bit here, handles our raycast to see if we hit something. But we don't care if you hit something. If you pull the trigger, the bullet is spent. So we're going to say my weapon handler dot my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets minus equals 1. Okay, so we're going to remove 1 bullet every time you pull the trigger. We also need to report that to our answer block, which I think we had in our weapon handler, if I remember right. That was what was doing with that. Let's go to the weapon handler. Yeah, my answer text is equal to my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets. And I can get rid of the rest of this. Okay. So that we put that in the weapon handler because we were looking at something about the weapon handler last time. What is this saying? Oh. You can't use you can't convert an integer to a string, but you can do it using this function toString, which will convert the number of bullets into a string, and then it'll put the string in the text, and then the text will be displayed on the screen. So I'm going to click Save, and go back to Unity. And I'm going to press play, and first of all, I want you to notice something, that the UI has gotten messed up in some way so that the question and answer are in the wrong place. They should be in the upper right-hand corner. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but I noticed because it looks correct here, but when I press play, it moves it down, which it shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to click on this, on the object in the scene, the question text. And yeah, it should be anchored in the upper right-hand corner, not in the center. And it should be, let's do minus 100. Let's do minus 200. And the position Y should be minus 50. And the answer text should also be anchored in the upper right-hand corner and should be minus 100, minus 200, I guess. Oh, that's too much. That's 1200. Minus 200. And position should be at negative 100. Or negative 75, I guess. Okay. Not sure how that got messed up, but you might want to update your handlers. You don't have to. It's just a thing we have on the screen to help us indicate what answer some questions for us. Oh, also notice that how many bullets are currently has been cut off. The reason for that is because the box is too small. So I'm going to go to the question text and make the height 60, and that will give us enough space to see the whole question. Now I'm
I have a compiler error, and it's in the weapon handler. Could I just see what you did on the my answer string? It says that I have. Oh, it's because I don't have the two parentheses at the end. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, toString is a function, and it doesn't take any arguments. Okay, so we're going to press play again, and now our weapon bullet count should keep up in the upper right-hand corner. And that's great. I'm now out of bullets. However, I can keep firing. So we need to deal with the fact of what if the player's out of bullets? So that's actually another condition we want to check before the player pulls the trigger, or when the player pulls the trigger. Does he have any bullets in his gun currently, or does he need to reload? So what we're going to do is we're going to come back here to the shot handler, which is going to do a lot of heavy lifting here. And this is the reason that I broke the if statement down into a block, because we're going to have a lot of conditional checks now, because there's a lot of conditions under which the player shouldn't be able to shoot. And my weapon handler dot my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets is greater than 0. So if you have more than 0 bullets in your gun, then you can fire a bullet. And then when you get down here to so what should happen now is we should be able to fire until we have no bullets left, and then we should be able to fire again. At which point we want to introduce the concept of reloading, which we're going to do. So I'm going to save this and go here. And we're going to make sure that functionality is working. We'll press play. I'm going to use up all my bullets. Hang on. Let's try that again. My bullet count is currently negative 25. Oh, haha. The reason my bullet count is negative 25 is because we haven't introduced the game manager yet, so the bullet count that I ended up with last time, which was negative 25, is still in my weapon definition. So if you go to... So this is different from most of our scripts, right? Like if I move my player around in the game and then I stop the scene, he goes back to where he was when he started. But if I change a scriptable object, it stays changed. And that's something to be conscious of. So let's go to my weapons, go to pistol, and you see it says my current loaded bullets is negative 25. I'm going to change this back to 15. But I'm not going to want to do that every time. So we're going to create a little game manager that's going to keep track of going to set some default values for us. We'll do that in just a second. First, let's make sure that my gun is unloaded and I can't shoot functionality works. Press play. 54321 and I can't shoot anymore, which means I'm doomed. But there's a health pack. But I can't do anything else, so I'm still doomed. Eventually. He's really bad at this. Okay, so my current loaded number of bullets is 0, and I want it to be 15. And we always want the player to start with a fully loaded clip for his pistol, and we're going to do that with a game manager. So let's create a new object in here. Create empty, and we're going to call it Game Manager. And we want to go to create add component here. I'm going to do Game Manager, which is going to be a new script we're going to create. And we're going to open this up. And notice something too, that if you have a script called Game Manager, it gets a unique icon so that you can quickly find it in your assets folder. Just like we assigned a special one to the scriptable objects, by default, anything called Game Manager is given this gear because it's such a common thing. And it's important, and you want to be able to find it, what have you. So anyway, we'll open up the Game Manager script. There's nothing in it. So we're going to, actually going to use these in just a second. We're going to do, what was that? Okay. Okay, let's create public game object, my player. And in the start function, we're going to say my player is equal to find object of type. Find object of type, the singular one. No. Find game object with tag. Is that what it's called? Hang on one second. I've got this written down somewhere. Game object, find game object with tag. Object singular with tag. And we set the tag equal to player. Okay. So this will return the first thing in the hierarchy that it finds with the tag of player. Mouse over that. Find game object with tag. So the reason we want to do this, we can also manually drag the player into the game manager in the scene and it will work. But for other scenes, the player may be in a different condition. So we want to have the game manager in the first frame of the scene go out and find the player. Then we want the game object. We want the game manager to load player's pistol with max shots. Okay, so the player's pistol is in the player's weapons list. So remember that the player here has a weapon list in its weapon handler. So we can go to the weapon list and grab the first one, and we know that that's the pistol. Now, this is one of those cases where we could have it search through the list and find the one called pistol, but we're going to just simplify our lives by saying the pistol is the 0th weapon and move on with our lives. Okay, so we're going to go my player dot get component weapon handler, and then you need parentheses here dot my weapon list, and my weapon list is list, and I want the 0th one dot my current bullet total. Sorry, that's not my current bullet total. That's the wrong one. Dot my current loaded bullets equals, I don't know why that happened. Okay. Equals all of this again. Dot my max bullet my bullets per magazine. I have a touchpad on this laptop and it's causing weird things to happen. There shouldn't be a single quote there. It should just be a semicolon. So let's see what this says. This says, go and get my weapon handler, then go to my weapon list, then go to the 0th item, which is the first item. It's a 0-based count. And then set my current loaded bullets for that weapon, and that weapon only, to go to my weapon handler, get my weapon list, go to the 0th item, and get the bullets per magazine. So if we change later how many bullets the pistol should hold, we don't have to come back in here and change this from 15 to 6 or whatever manually. The scriptable object will take care of it for us, which is great. So that's the only thing that our game object is going to do. Game manager is going to do right now. It will eventually handle things like the game being over or switching scenes, but right now it's just going to set up our weapon for us, so we don't have to keep reinitializing it. And anything we want to do that needs to be initialized in the scene with regards to our scriptable objects, we'll do through the game manager. We could attach it to the player, but I want it to be a separate thing because the player is getting a little bloated with a lot of scripts. The player is going to have a lot of scripts. It's the player. It's the main thing that the actual player is interacting with. But game manager stuff should be, initialization stuff we're going to handle in the game manager. Okay, click save. And if I go back to Unity and I put play, instead of having 0 bullets, I should start with 15. I'm down to 0. Stop the game. Hit play again. And I'm back to 15. So I don't have to reset that every time. And anything that we come up with, if you notice something that I'm resetting every time, raise your hand and say, hey, you should put that in the game manager. Okay, so we've finished setting up the simplest case with the pistol. The bullets are firing. The gun is getting emptied. And now we need to tell the player to reload. When the player reloads, we're going to force him to stand still because I'm mean. You can't move. And I've never in my life seen someone run and reload a weapon at the same time. And I was in the military. I mean the Navy, but still. Anyway, so we're gonna set this as a weakness for the player. So he has to strategically choose when to reload, and he wants to probably do it when there's not a lot of zombies around him, because if he runs out of bullets, then we want him to reload and he's gonna stand still. We could be extra mean, and the way I originally wrote it was, if the player runs out of bullets and pulls the trigger again, he stops and reloads. That, I think, is actually a little unfair. So we're going to introduce a dry fire sound. I need to send you guys a audio clip. But we're going to give the player an audio cue that he's out of bullets as well if he keeps pulling the trigger when his gun is empty. But we don't have the audio clip for that right now, so let's just we're going to leave that out for the time being. We'll come back to it. But we do want to make the player stop moving. How are we going to do that? Well, in our movement script, which we're going to open up, we're going to have to introduce a new check. We're going to have to introduce a Boolean here called isActive. And in start, we're going to set isActive is equal to true. And then in our update function that checks to see which direction we're moving, we're going to say if is active, then delete and go all the way down to here and put another one of these things in. And so now the movement input will only be processed if is active is set to true. So we're going to click save. And we're going to go back to Unity. And I want to look at something because there's something I think we skipped off in our weapons. Pistol. Yep. So in our, we want to now add in some more features to our weapon definition to deal with reloading. And so we're going to call this, let's go back to our weapon definition and do header, reload, details, and for right now we're just going to include one, which will be public, let's do a tooltip first. Tooltip, this is the amount of time it takes to reload this weapon. And it would public float my reload delay. Save that. Come back to the game. Check on pistol after it compiles. Okay, so currently he has a reload delay of 0. I want the reload delay to be longer than that so that we can see the logic that we're about to put in place. So I'm going to set the reload delay to be 2. Okay, so we had checked before to see if the shot, if the player had shot, and let me show you something in Shot Handler. Shot Handler says go to, if the shot works, it says go to my weapon handler and execute player shoot. So we need a corollary to that of execute player reload. And we want it to happen in the weapon handler because the weapon handler is supposed to handle changes to our weapon aside from shooting. And reloading is not shooting. So we don't want the reload function to be in the shot handler because I don't want it to be. Okay, So I'm going to go to the weapon handler, and I'm going to go down to player shoot. And player shoot does a couple of things. It sets up a shot coroutine, and then it runs. And right now all it does is cause our gun blast to fade. And the shoot coroutine, that's really the only thing that happens. We're going to create a new routine that looks just like this, though, and we'll set it right below it here called public void player reload. And we can talk about different ways of getting the player into this condition. We're going to say my reload coroutine is equal to reload coroutine. You're going to get a bunch of red stuff because we have to create some things that we haven't created yet. My wait time. And all that's red because none of those things are defined. And then we're going to do reload. I'm just copying straight from the player shoot thing. Reload coroutine. I'm spelling correctly. My reload coroutine. I know it seems like we're putting an extra step in here when we could just call reload coroutine my reload coroutine with some wait time. But actually, you can't call coroutines that way for some reason. So you need to have them split in extra steps. There probably is a way to do it. I just don't know what it is. First of all, I need to go back up to my variables and define all this stuff. So under the player I enumerated my shot coroutine, I'm going to write private I enumerator my reload coroutine. That way I'll be able to define this. So this is now fine. But now I need to create the I enumerator that actually is the reload coroutine. So we're going to go private I enumerator reload coroutine my wait time. And my wait time is actually going to be defined as the reload time on the weapon. So instead of calling it my wait time here, let's actually go to get my current weapon definition dot my reload delay. And that will define that correctly. And this actually needs to be float my wait time. We have to tell it that reload coroutine takes a float as an argument. Okay, this is just not spelled correctly. I was like, that should clear that up, but it's not. Nah. There, that should clear that up. Okay, and this is saying no. We'll come back to that in just a second. I'm not sure what's going on there. So we're going to want to wait the amount of time that we're defining as my wait time, which is the reload delay. So we're going to do yield return new wait for seconds my wait time. Okay. Let's save that. I'm still getting an error though. What am I doing differently? Oh, no? Uh-oh, I've done something wrong. I'm not sure what it is. This reload coroutine that's the problem. This shouldn't say reload coroutine, this should say start coroutine. There we go. Okay. So I said the wrong syntax. So now that looks good and it will wait. The problem is we won't have any indication that it's waiting because the player will still be able to move around. So what we want to do in here is set the player's movement to be inactive. So we're going to say get component movement dot is active equals false. And after we waited the appropriate amount of time, we'll set it back to true. And that should handle us for now. So let's press play. Oh, we also need to be able to reload. And the reload function is not actually going to reload the weapon right now. All it's going to do is make a stop for a couple of seconds. But I want to... let's finish doing the whole reload, because it won't make any sense. So let's go back to the weapon definition. And the weapon handler. In the reload, we also want to do then at the end of the reload coroutine, we want to set my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets is equal to my current weapon definition dot my bullets per magazine. Right? You want to fill it up. And that is true unless you don't have the number of bullets per magazine left. If your bullets per magazine is 15 and you have 3 left, we don't want to give the player 15 bullets. So first let's create an int here called my loaded bullet count. My loading bullet count. And that is going to be equal to my current weapon definition dot my bullets per magazine minus my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets. So let's think about what this is. If your bullets are full, then it's going to load 0 bullets, which is fine. If your bullets are halfway done, it's only going to load whatever it needs to load to fill up your magazine. And we also need to check to see how many bullets you have left and make sure that we're not taking more than that. So, if my loading bullet count is greater than my current weapon definition dot my current bullet total, then we're going to load up to the current bullets, and then we're going to subtract from my current weapon definition dot my current bullet total minus equals my loading bullet count. Yes, so this will set your magazine back up to full, and then we'll set your current bullet total will be decreased by that amount. But we have one more weird definition. We also need to do this if the weapon has a current bullet total of -1, because remember, that's how we indicate that it's infinite. So we can say OR, and the way you do OR is shift vertical bar. It's the number above the key above the enter key. Most people you may not know where those are, but it's shift and the number above the enter key. And that says OR, meaning if either one of these things is true, then do this. Or my current weapon definition dot my current bullet total is equal to -1. And we want to put that check here too. If my current weapon definition dot my current bullet total is not equal to -1, then we want to subtract bullets away. And again, I know I'm trying to do too much stuff here at once because I'm actually thinking ahead to the next weapon. I should have just set it up for the pistol, but we got it in place now. So let's check out what this does. If I've got more bullets left than goes in each magazine, nope, that's not what this does. This says if I've got more bullets left than goes in my current bullet total. So let's do this instead. Instead of doing bullets per magazine, because we already accounted for bullets per magazine up here, let's do plus equals my loading bullets. That way we don't have to worry about keeping track of which one we're doing. So we're always going to load the number of my loading bullets. In this case, it says if my count is more than I have, or my weapon bullet total is -1, then load all the bullets in. and if it's not equal to -1, then subtract it from my current bullet count. So let's do the other case, which is else. I could write it out, but just the other condition, if you're in a reload situation, is you don't have the number of bullets. Then let's reset my loading bullet count is equal to my current weapon definition dot my current loaded bullets. And set. And then we're going to just copy this line. Yep. Okay, but there is one case we want to consider, so let's put a clause in here. Else if my current weapon definition dot my current bullet total is greater than 0. So basically, we don't want the player to get stuck reloading if they don't have any bullets for this weapon. In fact, let's not do that. Actually, I'm thinking through the cases as we go along. Let's deal with the fact of the player being completely out of bullets for a given weapon when we have a weapon that can be completely out of bullets, which our pistol currently can't. So, okay, I'm going to click save here. But we're going to have to deal with that case, which is, I'm going to make a note here that says, need to deal with the case of the player being out of bullets entirely. Okay. So we'll remember we have to come back and deal with that. And that check should actually happen before we get to a reload action. So, okay. So the shot handler right now is dealing with our shooting. I'm going to also have it deal with our reloading. So outside of this if that checks about shooting, which is here, I'm going to say if input.get button reload, then my weapon handler dot my weapon handler dot player reload. So if the player tells us he wants to reload, then call the reload function. That should get us all the way through with reloading our pistol. I think we may find some weird case, but I think that's everything. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do then is we need to create the reload button, because we don't have one right now. Go to Edit, Project Settings, grab this from another screen, come down here to our cancel after previous weapon and rename it as reload. And we're going to make the positive button R. We're going to get rid of the joystick button, and we're going to leave it at that. So we're all set there. So I can close this. Remember, we had previous weapon was Q and next weapon was E. So we've now got R built into the mix, and I bet we'll go something to do with F and have that whole side of the keypad being used for stuff. When we get around to porting it to the gamepad, we'll just set it to one of the buttons on the gamepad. Okay, so I'm going to shoot 15 times. Nothing is happening. I'm going to press R, and I freeze in place for 2 seconds, and my bullets come back. So everything is good is happening, except one little thing, which is when I go to reload, my animation doesn't stop. So that's the last thing I think I'm going to do today, is let's update the animation to deal with the fact that the player is reloading, and then we'll have to have our animator handler be notified by our shot handler or by the weapon handler that the player is reloading, and it will deal with that. So we're gonna first let's go to the soldier base, because remember the animator controller is on the soldier's base, not on the container. And if we go to locomotion, you see we've got a blend tree here. So what we want to do then is come back out here and go from any state, and we're going to create a new parameter called, let's make it a let's make it a trigger called is reloading. Do we want to make it a trigger, or we're going to make it a Boolean? If it's a Boolean, it will say true, but we want it to come from any state, so let's make it a trigger right now. And we're going to go down to our Toon Model Zombies animation, go to Handgun, and there's a Handgun Combat Reload. And if you click on this, you can preview this animation down here. So that's what he's going to do. So let's drag this into the scene. And then we're going to make this make transition here. And then I'm going to set the condition for this to be none of these things, 0 of these things. And you see it needs at least one condition, or otherwise it will not be ignored. We're going to add the condition of is reloading. So is reloading will take us to the combat reload, and it will play exactly one time. Then we want to get out of combat reloaded and go back to locomotion. So we're going to make another transition in here, and we're going to make another trigger called reload complete. Okay, and then this transition won't have an exit time, won't have fixed duration, none of these things. All these things should be unchecked. I should have my warning, and I'm going to say plus reload complete. Okay, and if you want to see what it looks like when you transition, you'll go back to being idle, which is what we want. Okay, so we're going to, all that's already set. So let's go to, now we need to go to our animator handler to take care of that, and then we'll be done with our pistol, and it will be completely implemented in our game, which is pretty neat. So let's go to Simple Player, go to the animator handler, and we're going to say public void start reload. And when that happens, my animator dot set float set trigger is reloading. And then we're creating another one called public void completed reload. End reload. How about that? End reload. My animator dot set trigger reload complete. I'm going to double check in the animator that this is what I named these and I have the right capitalization. Yep, reload complete, and it's reloading. Okay, so those both look like they're going to match. Save this. And then we're going to have the weapon handler call it when you call player reload. So before we start the reload coroutine, we're going to say, see if the weapon handler already has a connection to the animator. It does not, but we can do it explicitly in this loop because it's not going to come up very often. My get component animator handler dot start reload, and then we can just copy that line. And then once we're done, in other words, after my wait time, then we'll set it back to active, allow the player to start up again, and reload. Save. Come back to Unity. And we'll press the reload button. He's going to reload. And I can run again. Beautiful. Okay. So press reload again. And you really do see how that works at disadvantage to the player. And, of course, the heavier weapons, we're going to have longer reload times just to be annoying. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there for this week. We've got the pistol set up in its entirety. We can reload it. It has infinite bullets. We have our game manager, so that's resetting our count for our bullet for the pistol at the beginning of each play session, and we're keeping track of the bullets correctly. We're stopping and reloading, and we even got an animation in there. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm going to stop recording here. Thank you guys for your time and attention. I'm going to stop recording.